What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Yoga Tantra Healing channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about shadow work and the dark side of Kundalini awakening. So if you're new to the channel, we talk about all things Kundalini awakening using the methods of yoga, Tantra, natural healing methods, and modalities from all around the world to weave together a holistic system that we can benefit from, that we can thrive and become our best selves through doing, connected to our higher self, connected to God. But I want to talk about that darker side of Kundalini awakening, the shadow self. This is the part of self that is often most fragmented, and in the Kundalini awakening, especially abrupt awakenings, the shadow becomes more and more apparent for you. The subconscious mind begins as the subconscious mind begins to expand, and your awareness of what is, who you are, beyond the limited self. Once that self-realization begins to occur, that's one of the signs you could say to look for, to say, hey, my Kundalini is awakened. Beyond the energy, and the bliss and all these sometimes fleeting experiences, sometimes sustained experiences. That's how you know you've really integrated the shadow. But that's what this video is about, is integrating that shadow self. Because as you break through each chakra, you're going to realize the Kundalini awakens on a major scale through each chakra, so 7 times. Not just the root awakening, that initial rush and liberation of energy in your spinal cord, but really getting to the point where you realize you're going to have multiple awakenings. And each chakra also has a shadow, you could say. I made that video on the 7 deadly sins and the relationship to the chakras, and you can check that video out. And really, you could configure that in any way you want to, and that's just one method of looking at, these traditions, these numbers, these different spiritual traditions that somehow have similar connotations. And the more we look at those and compare those, we can begin to see, okay, these are the, more negative aspects of these chakras, or the shadow, where the shadow, if the shadow is in the driver's seat or in control, then you could be consumed by those so-called sins. So sin isn't to be looked at least in our perspective, as a punishment system. It's a state of consciousness, just like the chakras. As we awaken each chakra, we're opened to a new state of consciousness. Naturally, all the chakras are open to a minor degree, but the Kundalini awakening, again, goes through each of them to fully blossom the potential. You can't function without the different glands and such, as what I'm saying. But there still could be in a dormant state spiritually and energetically, and as well as the petals and the full blooming of the chakra. So understand that you're going to have to work through all these different layers of the 7 chakras, the major system, and then you have the minor and the 12, the different ways you can look at it, but we like to keep it simple and straightforward here. But just realize, so it's not just these 7 sins. You could elaborate that if you wanted to, or you could shrink it down. This is the way Tantra works also, is that we become our own alchemists of these understandings, and we learn to break through those limiting beliefs that, oh, this is the only way it can be perceived, because we can perceive it again. This is shadow work, is beginning to use the subconscious mind for what it's good for, and not be used by the subconscious mind. Because once you open to the subconscious, the shadow is all the experiences you've had over your entire life is stored in the subconscious. You're used to just this limited perspective, this 5 to 10% of your brain and the conscious, and all that subconscious just background controlling your thoughts and your behaviors and your emotions, until you gain awareness. That is the first stage of Kundalini awakening, is awareness of self. Oh, I am embodied in this vessel, in this body, and I have the ability to be controlled by that body, or the awareness, the I am, the spirit, the soul, the essence of God in each of us. I am awareness, again, illuminates the shadow, and then you begin to see, what am I really? You ask that question, and that's also illuminating the shadow, because the shadow feels separate. But this is, like I said, we begin to awaken we start to see that these energies, these different energy centers, they don't have to be our enemies. We can alchemize that shadow in each of these chakras. And that's when we get into, the cities, the psychic powers, how each chakra has its respective cities that you can unlock through the shadow work, not just through the light work and through the exercise, the yoga, or the breath of fire. I don't even recommend that people try that breath of fire until they're somewhat more advanced on their practice of just asana and meditation, stabilizing the body, some chanting, some simple chanting, because you want to energize the body correctly. And that's where these abrupt awakenings in the new modern way of doing Kundalini yoga, which is why I emphasize this. I'm not trying to knock it, because I've done it at one point. It's very powerful. And I was, already 5-6 years on my path of Hatha yoga and Egyptian Tantra yoga and various other forms of Tantra that I blended into my practice, Taoist Tantra and Tai Chi, Qigong a bit. But I want to focus on the subject of this video, the shadow work. But all those practices are great too, is what I'm saying, to help your journey, because this is what's going to awaken. But again, if you overdo it, even with any of those practices, different breath work and stuff, you don't need to go that far early on your journey if you're just getting started. That's why I offer guidance. You can reach out in the descriptions. I have links to my course, my 7-chakra 9-week activation course, as well as my monthly Patreon subscription and private lessons you can book with us. So check those links out in the description if you want to get in contact with us and actually start to experience your Kundalini awakening. Because then when I can work on these things one-on-one with you, when you have, say, the root chakra and certain fears and shadows and maybe repressed memories, repressed emotions, this is where trauma healing really becomes a big thing, because we've all gone through certain trauma through the school system, our parents being raised a certain way, religion trying to raise and dictate us a certain way, government, whichever ways you want to look at it. Everything has controlled us, tried to control us to a degree, and planted all these images, and buy this and listen to this and talk like these people and think like this and make money like this. And that's a shadow, that we have to work through as a program. And when we can overcome that, we start to see that, okay, I can actually overcome, excuse me, I had a little green juice mixture tea that I made. Focusing on the subject. When you understand that these different obstacles, you could say, are necessary on the path, this is alchemy. This is when you realize all of these emotions, all of these different levels of awareness can help you discover more of who you are and your unique embodiment. This is Kundalini awakening also. It's not just I am all of creation and I'm connected to God and I'm connected to Source and Great Spirit and Goddess lives within me and I am everything, and I'm nothing, and all these lofty concepts. Like, those things are true, but don't just stay in the flighty. Like, you have to understand in the flighty thought of that realization is the embodiment of that principle, and that living as through that principle. What would I do if I was always connected to God? And you're not always going to be so perfect that you have to do that, but many masters emulated that path for us, and we follow those teachings for those reasons. But begin to understand, for the shadow work to begin to integrate your chakras, you're going to have these minor awakenings where it's just like, I'm afraid of talking to strangers or talking to people, and that's dealing with my throat chakra, my ability to communicate and to be my authentic self, which again is becoming who you truly are, is being your authentic self in all situations, not just when you're around the people you love or your best friend, but when or your spouse or whoever, your partner, but when you're in those difficult situations or are around difficult people, can you still maintain that integrity without having to change yourself for these molds of what people expect you to be? because your unique gift is your unique expression in all these places, no matter who you're speaking to. Your unique self, by being and embody that, it's said that we change the frequency of the earth, of the entire reality. When one of us awakens, when more of us awaken, when we collectively awaken, and then we connect together even more. Reason why I have a private community for us to connect together on, away from the noise of, the interwebs, if you will. But we can do deeper shadow work there together, collectively, because there's a collective shadow also. This is where it gets really deep, when you start to access, when Kundalini Shakti really raises and you're beginning to see and perceive from the third eye. And I don't want to, give people experiences, but just to, imagine this, that there's a collective shadow and a collective unconscious that we can tap into. And you could say the Akashic records and all that too, but the collective unconscious is those specific problems that we are dealing with as a collective. And there's a solution to these things. There's a liberation, a certain topic, a certain feeling, a certain chant, a certain frequency that we can tap into that can liberate those stuck emotions and energies on a collective scale, which then increases the ascension and upliftment of humanity on that level also. So as each of us do the individual work, that's how we change the reality. Everyone wants to talk about changing the reality. This is a little shadow work for you, because I gotta do all these things, I gotta go out here and I gotta do these things, connect with these people, and we have to make these events, and we think that's gonna do it, or we did this and now we made the accomplishment, or we'll never be able to do it. The pessimistic side, we'll never be able to do that. The optimistic side, I'm gonna do everything I can. And we're always trying to get to some point, changing the outside, or you awaken and then you want to tell everybody. It's like, no, take that moment to realize when you have these profound awakenings, don't just go out and start telling everybody. Realize your vibration shifting and Kundalini beginning to rise in you. Her awakening in you is shifting the vibration on the planet. And then that's when we can once we access our own unconscious fears and belief systems that have been holding us back, break through those through chakra work. This is where the yoga and the breath work comes in, because now we have a reason to do that, but that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't recommend, if you haven't gone through that initiation or done some form of self-practice, to just go and do Kundalini breath work or go and do all of these different mantras. Start simple, start with Om, start with chakra chants, start with 1 or 2 mantras, and begin to increase your awareness as your awareness expands. Stick to one, because that's going to be more powerful than doing all of them, is if you can stick to one thing. Get really good at one thing, like my asana practice. Once I developed a certain routine over the years, it was probably 7-8 years, I really developed this core routine. I was like, this is the routine. And I got my certificate later, but I also did a course back then that wasn't YTT, but it was still a meditation yoga course, teacher training. And I learned all my postures and asanas, and I made this perfect routine. I've stuck to that routine every day, and I have variations that I add in. Sometimes I add more, sometimes I have an extra evening session of just the asana. Not the only practice I do on a daily basis, but my main core morning practice has been this asana sequence that I developed, and it targets the full body from head to toe. And that's also what I'll be sharing with you all for your practice, and working with your unique body and what stretching you are looking for. Say, I have this lower back pain, and I can customize it for you, but I have this specific practice that I've stuck to, and it's changed my life in ways that I still just can't even imagine. Because like I said, I've done the intense Kundalini yoga too, but I've developed this more Hatha Egyptian Tantra, Kemetic Tantra yoga practice that's more elongated poses and longer durations. And those have changed my life in such a way, it's allowed me to work through the shadows, because all my chakras are functioning on a higher energetic level. And that's what I want to help all of you with. So that's something, if you're interested in, check out the links in the description, get in contact with me, and we'll get you started on your unique awakening journey. I can also help you through those key points. I have the 2 different tiers, longer sessions where we can talk more specifically about these things as well as the practices. So check those links out. Get in touch with us. I'll have more videos on the shadow. This is an introduction to shadow work, and also just some ideas, some deep thoughts that I felt we could share in this time and get us all up to speed on this channel. So lots of love, healing vibrations, and praises, Jai Ma, Jai love to all beings.